In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Today, well, before I start, 1 week till my birthday. Looking forward to it. This year has been wonderful so far. Thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, everyone who keeps me in their good wishes. All my love and prayers for you. Um, it's a very important chapter of the Quran today. So I've put the Quran to the side because I'm going to give a bit of a preface um, through the antecedent, which is the Bible, the previous book, chapter 3 of Exodus, where Moses, who in who is otherwise referred to as Moshe or Musa, or Moshe, or Moses, the leader of the Israelites and the prophet for Judaism, when Moses comes across God for the first time. Hi, Gunan Ori. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Hope you find this interesting because today is a very, very important section of the Quran. That's why I'm starting with the Bible. Um, Moses is a shepherd at this time, looking after sheep, goes to the mountain, sees a burning bush, um, and goes to explore what is going on. As he explores, he hears the sound, he hears his name, and he speaks to God. And there's a conversation. And Moses has had several conversations with God. I'm not going to dive too deep into this because if you want a wonderful visual representation of it, the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, Exodus with Christian Bale, or The Prince of Egypt by DreamWorks. All three pretty nicely done pieces of work. I'm glad that Hollywood and studios take religious material and try to give it respect. Sometimes that respect may be wanting, understandable, but they try to give it respect. So all three representations that I've seen of Moses on the big screen, and even of Jesus Christ for that matter, they're pretty nice, pretty good representations. So please look into that if you want to imagine it, because today we're not talking about the Bible, we'll be talking about the Quran. But I want to emphasize this by saying, how does God define God? And for lack of a better word in the English language, I will use himself or him, or sometimes I might use her, because in English we gender our subjects, don't we? And sometimes I'll use God. So if you want to take offense to that, be my guest. But it's not going to bring you any benefit. But the conversation starts, and God starts saying to Moses, "Go and preach this, and I'm here for my people, and this, that, the other." And Moses said, "Who am I that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Israel out of Egypt?" This is Exodus chapter 3, verse 11. And then I'll move forward. And he said, "Certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee, that I have sent thee when thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt. Ye shall serve God upon this mountain." Now, thee, thou, it's very easy to understand from old writing of the English language that they mean you, and thy means your, and there are just a couple of other uh, I think distinctions. I think thou was singular you and you was plural you, or something along those lines. If for some reason you're not familiar with this type of English, it's easy to Google. Thee, thou, thy. It's don't make a big deal out of it if you can't understand it. The message is here. Moses has been told to go to the Pharaoh and present this message for the children of Israel, or the people of Israel, and bring them out of Egypt. And Moses is saying, how can I go? Who am I? See, the wonderful thing that I see with all these religious figures is this abundant amount of shock. How do I? Why me? And I think perhaps it ties into some uh, dimension of humility that they have, or it's a personality trait, or so on and so forth. But when you're tasked with something so great, I suppose, I suppose that's what you would feel. I haven't felt that ever. Like, oh, why me? Wow, why do I deserve this? I don't think I felt that. But also, I've never led a people. I've led groups, but I've never led a people to greatness or to truth or to light or to God. I haven't done that. So I can't really put myself in Moses' shoes or sandals in this moment. So that's what God said. And Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. And that is Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. And I'm stopping the Bible here because I'm going to move to the Quran. But the reason I brought it up is if you are confronted is a very strong word, but I can't think of anything better. Let's say come across. If you come across the divine cosmic force or entity or being or phenomena, process, existence, that is God. Can you really ask him a precise question and expect a precise response? I don't think you can. It is not that God is unable to give it, but my understanding of it is the response you get is the response you actually need, not just in that moment, but in moments to come thereafter. And if you just say, what is your name? And God says, my name is X. Okay, I'll tell them X sent me. No, that's not how the people would be convinced. I am that I am is so much a powerful statement of God to Moses. And the reason I mentioned the Ten Commandments, Exodus, and the Prince of Egypt as representations of Moses' encounter with divinity, um, encounters with divinity, is just so you can see how powerful those scenes are, even when you know you're watching a film or something through a medium. Even watching that, you're like, good Lord, that's incredible. Imagine being Moses. Imagine being there and hearing that. I would shudder and fall to my knees, I'm telling you. And I think he did as well. It's incredible. The reason I preface today's topic with the Bible is because today we're covering chapter 112 in arrangement and chapter 22 in revelation order, which is Surah Al-Ikhlas. It means the purity, the oneness, sincerity. It means many, many things. And it has multiple names. It can be called At-Tawheed or something. And Tawheed is the central idea of this chapter. Tawheed is the central idea, but B, Tawheed is the central idea of being a Muslim. Central. If you don't have that, you don't have Islam. That's how central it is. That is why this chapter is very important. There are countless sayings said by the Prophet and referred to by people close to him, which is easily available on the internet through the ahadith. And I'll only share some of them. about how important this chapter is, but I'm just going to read the translation first, and then I'm going to dive deeper into what Tawheed means, and then I'm going to dive deeper into why so briefly expressed, but also at the same time so important. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Say, O Muhammad, He is God, the One. Allahu Samad is the second verse, which means Allah, the self-sufficient master whom all creatures need. He neither eats nor drinks. He begets not, nor was he begotten, and there is none co-equal or comparable unto him. That is it. That is it. That is all of it. Yeah, I'm seeing comments in my Twitch, so I will address all these ridiculous comments once I've done reading this holy book. But if you keep showing sass like this, I wouldn't be commenting. So nice try. But think about this. He is God, the One. Why was this necessary? Now let's put ourselves in the context. Polytheistic world, the world where idols are being worshipped, the world where fire is being worshipped. This is the time when Prophet Muhammad became a prophet. At that time, so in the past 22 weeks, you have seen he's spreading his message, he's facing resistance, but he's plowing on, he's pushing on and on and on. So we don't know if where he stands, but the people of the time are questioning his every motive, and he always looks. And he remember a couple of weeks ago we talked about the bargaining that was happening. So the people of Mecca would say, "Oh, maybe we'll give you this, we'll give you that, but we'll worship your God if you worship mine." And that was happening. We discovered that a couple of weeks ago. And Muhammad said no. He, of course, consulted God and then said, no, you go your way, I'll go my way. That's the distinction. But he would continue preaching his message because he was still living there. He's continue preaching his message. So the idol worshippers would ask him questions about his God. What is his name? What does he look like? What is he made of? Does he eat? Does he drink? What does he eat? What does he drink? And so forth. The anthropomorphic tendency of human beings is age old. So we think of God, an unseen entity for most of us at least, or unseen in attributes that we ascribe. Maybe we see God all the time, all around us. You never know. And I do believe that. But unseen, so we anthropomorphize. We say, okay, God has hands, and God has a smile, and God is happy, and God is sad, and God is love. And we ascribe emotions that we feel and attributes that we possess to an unseen, non-local entity. Fair enough. So they would ask these questions. What is he made of? Is he made of wood? Is he made of steel? Is he made of stone? Why would someone ask that? So go back to the argument of professions or the argument of knowledge bubbles. You can only think along lines that you are familiar with. So if you speak to a farmer, the language mostly a farmer would use would be related to farming, because for 12 hours a day, he's exposed to that, at least 12 hours. If there is an exception that he watches CNBC every night or is a big political fan, that's an exception. But most of us, if you don't want to consider a farmer, consider a nurse, consider a doctor, consider a lawyer or a professor, consider all of them. They only use language. They mostly use language that falls under their comfortable language bubble and that they're more familiar with. So idol worshippers would ask about how he looks, What is he made of? How big is he? Because that is what they do with regards to their God. So they say, okay, tell us what he looks like, tell us what he's made of, how many is he, and so forth. And then they'd ask, what does he eat? What does he drink? Now, you've seen this practice in other religions of presenting food to representations of divinity. I'm not going to zero in on a particular one because I'm not an authority on the subject. But you present food to a religious entity, and whether the entity consumes the food or the offering is superfluous. What matters is you giving it. I understand the respect and the logic, and fair enough. So they would ask these questions: what does he eat? What does he drink? What do we bring to him? So, as a as a 7th century Arab of the time, living and seeing this fellow Muhammad walking around and telling people there's this new God and worship him, I would say, okay, he wants to talk. Let's talk to him. So, my God is 6 feet tall. He's made of stone and wood, and he drinks milk. So I present him milk every other evening. And he also has 2 big eyes, and he has a nose, and he has 3 arms, and so on and so forth. And if I created an idol, I would say that. Or if I took an idol which was already created and followed that, worship that, fair enough, I would have clear descriptions. This book is 5 inches, or let's say 12 centimeters. It has hundreds of over 1,000 pages. It is colored in black. It has gold writing. Descriptive, easy. So if someone says I'm writing a book, I'd say, okay, how big is it? How thick is it? What is it about? What the colors are? You use what you know. You're not going to go along lines that you don't know. Robert Berry, thank you so much, sir, for dropping by. Waiting for you in Montreal, you and Rollis, obviously. So you'd ask these questions. So these people were asking whether it was genuine or whether it was sarcastic or insulting. I don't know. The history says that it was more of a challenge. But even if it were a genuine question, Muhammad would ask God. And the answer God gave is this. Say he is Allah the One, Allah the self-sufficient master whom all creatures need. He neither eats nor drinks. He begets not, nor was he begotten, and there is none co-equal or comparable to him. That's it. That's the whole story, isn't it? So it's so different to what they're expecting. So God, just like God with Moses, the question has not been answered. Moses asked, what name shall I give them? And God says, I am that I am. Here, they've asked, what does he eat? What does he look like? What is he made of? And he's given a different answer. But that answer is more important and it's more relevant to the Islam that develops and that has developed over the last 1400 years. That is why this is God's answer, not a human's answer. There's a lot of foresight. So now let's talk about what it means to be one God. So the concept of Tawheed is central in Islam. And in the appendix of this Quran, it says Tawheed means declaring God to be the only God. It has 3 aspects. Oneness of the lordship of God, oneness of the worship of God, and oneness of the names and the qualities of God. There's some detail to it, which we don't need to get into. But about the lordship, it says to believe that there is only one Lord for all the universe, and he is its creator, organizer, planner, sustainer, the giver of security, that is God. So you see the attributes. You see this in Christianity, you see this in Hinduism, in Judaism, you see this in all religions. There are a lot of attributes that are ascribed to God, and those are how human beings relate to God. So Tawheed is the central one. None has the right to be worshipped, fair enough. Ascribe the qualities that God has outlined, fair enough. All of that makes sense. And then it just gives some examples. Yeah, and some aspects of God, meaning yeah, nothing else. Yeah. So that is how Tawheed works. How is it distinct um, from Hinduism? Hinduism has Ishwar, Hinduism has the Trimurti, Hinduism has Durga, Hinduism has millions and millions of divine entities. Islam has one. Power none, one and only, nothing beyond, done. That is Islam. How is it different to Christianity? The idea of the Trinity is God, one God, but represented in three forms or three parts of the same whole. We will come to that years later when I unpack this book in detail. But in Islam, one. Not even Muhammad is divine. Not even Gabriel is divine. There is one that is divine. And whether you conceptualize the one as all encompassing or whether you conceptualize him as an a being in the sky, it's different, but it doesn't add or take away from the argument because it's one. That is God. Self-sufficient master whom all creatures need. He neither eats nor drinks. Neither eats nor drinks is kind of an answer to what the Meccans of the time were asking Muhammad. But you also have to consider, why is this point even mentioned? And why is the point of self-sustaining all creatures need? I think now, whether we're closer to the truth or not, I don't know, because I'm one of you. But our science has started to tell us what space-time is, what the universe is, how infinitely huge it is, and so on and so forth. And I think this kind of indicates the concept of God existing beyond time and God existing. So to consume food and for that food to become sustenance is also a temporal activity. We're not doing it at the same time. The consumption has to happen. It's a process, just like drinking, just like sleeping. Everything is a temporal process. There's very few things that are not temporally aligned on a spectrum or on a sequence. I think this is an indication of God existing beyond time, because the next thing that ties into that, but also develops it further, is he begets not, nor was he begotten, which means he didn't come from anything, and nothing as a follower, as a child, comes from him. Clear distinction from at least modern translations of Christianity, or also from Christianity, because the Son of God, Jesus Christ, the belief in Christianity, is distinctly different, distinctly from this verse. Here, God comes from no one, and nothing as a follower comes from God. It doesn't beget. There's no child. And that's why it's an incredibly important verse. You also have to start thinking of, because I'm a rationalist and I love physics, so I always start thinking of, okay, so what's the source? So what's the source? So now God is, in this verse, God is saying, I am the source. I am the eternal source where all things come from. I come from nothing. All things come from this. And that source, as we know, whether it's at the Big Bang or the Big Crunch or existing beyond time, there's no space, there's no time, everything comes from that. So whether you call it the divine spark or the quantum fluctuation or fluctuation in a string or primary string or whatever you want to, superstring, what matters is that nothing has created God. And there is none co-equal or comparable unto him. Another distinction from polytheism. But I think in polytheism, equal and same is distinguished, because Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are the Trimurti, the three of the most important divine figures in Hinduism. And one may argue who is greater, who is stronger, who is weaker, but they have very distinct roles. So, although you may argue on that point, at the end of the day, you might say they're equal but different. So I think the term equal still applies there, but it also applies here. There's none co-equal or comparable to him. And that's very, very important. I know I'm going a bit over time because normally I finish in 25 minutes, but I have to share all of this. Um, it is narrated by the Prophet, by Muad bin Jabal, that the Prophet said, "O Muad, do you know what God's right upon his slave is?" And Muad said, uh, "You and God probably know better." And the Prophet said, "To worship him alone and join none in worship with him." "Do you know what their right upon him is?" He replied, "You know better." He said, "Not to punish them if they did so." Perfect, makes sense. A man, this is narrated by Sayyid al Khudri, a man heard another man reciting this chapter, these four verses, which I would I would be I would be awestruck if I came across a Muslim who has practiced maybe a week even, a grown-up Muslim, not a child who can't speak, but a Muslim who has sense of the religion and who has some exposure to not know this chapter. I would be shocked if that were the case. It's that central. It's the summary. It's the definitive definition and asserted position of God. This is what God is. Um, and you'll see most Muslims recite this chapter in the Quran. I would be surprised if they don't. Most of them do it. A man heard another man reciting this chapter, and he recited it repeatedly. When it was in the morning, he went to the Prophet and informed him about that, as if he considered that the recitation of that chapter by itself was not enough. Fair enough, that's your position. Fair enough, no problem. The Prophet said, by him in whose hand my soul is, it is equal to one third of the Quran. This is from Sahih al Bukhari 97374. That's a huge assertion, isn't it? By him whose hand my soul is in, it is equal to a third of the Quran. So many times, if you go to South Asia or if you go to the Middle East, you'll see this practice. You'll see Muslims doing this practice of reciting this chapter three times. It's just four verses. It literally takes under half a minute to recite this chapter three times. I'm not kidding. I'm telling you, it's just that fast. Even if you do it slowly, you can do it in a minute, three times. So, and they recite it because it's the summary. So, third, that's the whole Quran. That's how important it is. Um, Narrated by Aisha, the wife of Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet sent an army under the command of a man who used to lead his companions in the prayers and would finish his recitations with this chapter. Say, O Muhammad, he is God the One. When they returned from the battle, they mentioned that to the Prophet. He said to them, "Ask him why he does so." They asked him, and he said, "I do so because it mentions the qualities of the Most Gracious. I love to recite it in my prayer." Whoever this gentleman was, I feel the same way. I do the same. It's one of the best chapters of the Quran. The Prophet said to them, "Tell him that God loves him too." This is from Sahih al-Bukhari 97375. It's incredible. There's many more. I'm not going to read all of them, but I hope. I was speaking to my mother last night, and normally I'm not nervous about the chapters that I'm covering because I'm familiar with them, and I know that within 25 minutes I can do a bit of translation, understand it, place it in some context, try to think about it, analyze it. This one I was nervous, and you can see why. This is the longest video I've done on the Quran so far, and it's because I can continue to talk about each one of those four verses and also the related attributes it has with other qualities of God and in the context and what was happening. I can continue talking about it for the next hour because it is simply that important. I wish I had my copy of other books from other religions, so I could do a cross reference, because essentially that is the purpose of me doing these videos. We start with the Quran, and hopefully in 2 years' time, I'll be covering the Bible and the Vedas and the Old Testament and so on and so forth. I'll be covering all of them because I love religion and I love God. So I wish I had more time, or I wish I did a better job of explaining all this parsimoniously, but I can't. It's a very important chapter. If you have any interest in God, or in the Quran, or in Islam, or if you just want to read something interesting, I would recommend reading Exodus chapter 3. I would recommend reading the Quran chapter 112 in terms of organization. Two incredibly well written one. And just to speak about this chapter in the Quran, it ties everything. I have to tell you, it covers everything, and it does so in the manner that only God can do so. For the life of me, I've spoken English for almost 34 years. 32 to 33. I've spoken English. I know I have a substantial vocabulary. I have a substantial grasp of the language. There's very little in the English language that is written sensibly that I don't understand. Very little. But I can't explain all the greatness of the universe in 4 verses. That's something that I can leave only up to God. And thank you, Lord, for writing these wonderful books and for being so close to us and for loving us. Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know I went longer, but you can see why. It is my birthday next week, so pray for my good health and pray for my success and prosperity. And I will invariably and definitely pray for yours. Don't need any gifts, not into that stuff. Just need love and support, and just pray that we do better. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next week.